Marcus, we got one big review this week. Let's get into it.
Come now, swing wide those gates.
This is a band you may have had the opportunity to catch open for issues in 2019. Maybe you know them for selling out a headlining performance at Wembley Arena in 0.5 yoctoseconds. Give or take, that is a real measurement. Or maybe you know him for opening Linkin Park's sold out show in Paris last year in front of 40,000 people. Perhaps you associate the band most with their music's dark fantasy elements and the unending spell it has cast over the book talk community, or for inspiring a loving couple to name their as of yet unbirthed fetus after their mysterious frontman vessel. Maybe you know them better for birthing syncopated grooves into the mainstream. Some of the real sickos out there might know this band as the only one to ever have covered all four of Outkast, Billie Eilish, Loathe, and Whitney Houston. Wherever you know Sleep Token from, the point is that you know them. You're probably extremely aware of who they are. Whether you like it or not, there is no escaping their reach. They are everywhere, all over socials, all over the charts, all over the festival posters. With all that in mind, Sleep Token has never asked for your attention. They command it. If the jump in popularity from 2023 through late 2023 and onward into 2024 was considered a meteoric rise, Sam, then what we are witnessing in 2025 is nothing short of an omniversal cataclysm. A force so powerful that it rips through the multiple universes, creating shockwaves that transcend dimensions. Better yet, Sam, maybe even a divine singularity. A force so concentrated it bends the laws of time and space, swallowing everything into a vast, infinite nothingness that defies understanding. Behold, Sleep Token have finally shared with the world their latest offering, Even In Arcadia. It released the 9th of May via RCA Records, their first album with that label after departing Spinefarm Records and signing with this new label in February of last year. Carl Brown returns to produce, marking back-to-back albums he has collaborated with the band on, the other, of course, being 2023's Take Me Back to Eden.
I'd like to think at this point, Carl Brown within this team is considered 5. I think
That's
he gets
crazy.
the number. I think he's earned it.
Wow. Let's see what you have to say, Sam.
Okay, so this sort of spurred from a conversation that I was having with our editor, Alex, leading up to me sort of writing out my thoughts for the review of this record, which was this didn't click the first time I listened to it. In preparation for reviewing this record, the first thing I did this morning was listen to Take Me Back to Eden again. I just needed to like validate that album was still that bitch in the way that I remembered it. And,
of course.
And I can come on this podcast and confirm it is indeed that bitch and will forever be that bitch.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here.
Mm-hmm. Alex sent me a message, right? And he's like, am I crazy? Or is this not quite hitting the first time around? And it really struck me because it was like, he like texted me this halfway through like Gethsemane the God is how I like to refer to it. It's like you were reading my mind at the time I was listening to the record. Like I listened to fucking Take Me Back to Eden and then jumped immediately into this. And it didn't quite feel like the revelation that record felt like the first time I listened to it. So my first overall takeaway is about repeat listens, because I found this record, once removed from the insurmountable expectations I developed for it, significantly improved with repeat listens as I found myself better understanding its intentions and acclimating to the ways it differentiates itself from its predecessor.
So I had a similar takeaway, not quite as mysterious as previous albums. As a whole, this band feels a little easier to predict. I think that there are clearly fewer rabbits in the hat, fewer sharp turns on the cliffside that send you launching off the side of the cliff in your car. Some of the subtleties in the lyricism has very evidently evaporated. With things like that, with fewer rabbits in the hat, we're still pulling out a saxophone, but it's not as crazy as the first time this band turned into a jazz band at the end of the summoning.
I think partially it may still be as crazy, but the novelty is worn off.
Some of the novelty and some of the mystery, again, when you start to strip away the subtlety and the lyricism and Vessel becomes an easier thing or person to pinpoint, it's a less crazy experience that does make for the need for repeated listens. Like this doesn't have me on the edge of my seat in the same way that Sundowning did, or the same way that, to a lesser extent, that second album. And then, of course, the last record, Take Me Back to Eden. And while there's still a bunch of cool, great things happening very frequently,
you learn to appreciate them differently.
Yeah.
You appreciate appreciated Take Me Back to Eden at the time because its weird blend of genres and different styles of music was so game-changing within our scene, not in a sense that no other band has done it, but the way that Sleep Token did it felt so deeply unique to them. And now that they've sort of cemented this signature style and you've come to expect it, it's not going to sweep you off your feet in the same way.
It's coping with having less goosebumps while listening to a record of theirs.
Right, like the idea that, like you said earlier, this mystery is gone and you're a little bit more familiar with the band behind the masks.
Sure.
You're comfortable with them in a weird way, right?
But it's
which
a
feels
difference.
detrimental, I
Right.
think, in a first listen, but in repeat listens, Marcos, I found that this album was very nutrient rich. And the more you indulge in it, the more you begin to capture individual beautiful moments throughout. Each time I circled back, I found myself stepping away with a newfound adoration and intricacy I didn't appreciate on a previous pass. And as I continued to rinse and repeat, I built this wealth of tiny appreciations. The title track, Even in Arcadia's gorgeous violin close, how Vessel delivers the final haunt this eclipse in me before utter catastrophe ensues in Looking Windward, the nursery rhyme xylophone-esque instrumental that accompanies Past Self, the beat drop in Dangerous, the tape stopping in Damocles, the swancore style guitar work of Gethsemane. All of these small individual moments ended up being things that when I circled back to this record, I really found myself appreciating, even though on the first time around, I wasn't caught off guard by them.
This band has been such an enigma for so long that like feeling like you can predict their next move has never been in the cards, and now it at times is, and sometimes you are successful, right?
And again, I think we talked about this early on when the singles were releasing. Them being unpredictable has become part of that predictability, right? So when this band towards the latter half of a song ends up pivoting into a completely different style, that starts to be part of my expectation, right?
It is something I really do still appreciate about this band. And I bring this up because I see a lot of people complaining, believe it or not, about something Sleep Token does. Most specifically here about how this band does not shy away from a lengthier track, opening this album off on a 6-minute track, releasing a 6-minute single. And I actually find myself really appreciating that they are one to do that. This band has a reputation for having become TikTok famous, and TikTok is associated with, you know, short form media, short attention spans, and this band forcing people to pay more attention to a song for longer than a second, or an album
to engage
for
with something
minutes.
that, you know, isn't part of the newly developed ADHD approach to listening to music.
Yeah, which is why I find it so annoying when I see people complain about the length of their tracks, because it's not 6 minutes of copy paste the same exact thing over and over. We don't get the chorus 6 times over. You could drop a pin into 3 separate parts of a song and hear something completely unrelated to what you heard previously.
And I think it's impressive the way that they challenge themselves to continue doing that, to try to craft something that keeps your attention and has these multiple shifting styles to keep it interesting. You could take any half of one of these songs and turn it into a 3-minute, most palatable TikTok worthy track.
Sure.
And yet you position yourself to have to be more creative. And that is an aspect of Sleep Token that really endears me to them. Another thing I was really impressed with on this album, Marcos, was the shift from Take Me Back to Eden into this record in the vocals from Vessel, who I think has developed a really confident delivery. I think the initial increased tempo pseudo rap delivery that transpired once or twice in the previous album now feels fully embraced and firing on all cylinders, practically best showcased by lead single Emergence. There's a confident approach to a vocal style here that feels built up from Take Me Back to Eden and expanded upon to create a more well-rounded, versatile style. That same voice still maintains an utterly gut-wrenching raw emotional depth that communicates its heavy sentiments. Dangerous, for example, is a masterclass from Vessel that I think fully captures the listener from its heartfelt intro before rupturing into a forceful, indignant, and assertive delivery. And title track, Even in Arcadia, allows the vulnerability to take center stage, and it tightens its grip so heavily on my heart that it nearly ruptured. It feels like the breadth of what Vessel can deliver in terms of their vocal style has really expanded expanded and we are richer for it.
Vessel is more confident, but I also think it's because we are pushing back a little bit more. Obviously, this band had an incredible surge in popularity. Again, the subtleties and the lyricism is gone. This guy is scared to open his front door. People are doxing this band left and right. And I think that a lot of the confidence in that vocal delivery, aspects of these songs, this album, comes from like a taking ownership back. It does not at all shy away from the subject matter of like coping with rising to fame very quickly and, you know, not exactly not wanting to appreciate that, but like acknowledging how smothering that is and how it can feel. And it's like, you can't shy away now. You have to fully embrace everything. That extends to everything that they do still. That is at their core. It's this band has like maintained a confidence, or that confidence has continued to evolve. And like, you really see it in how they present themselves. Announcing a tour, you still don't need to know the support. We're going to sell it out ourselves. Look at the track listing as well. The biggest artists in this world are all collaborating with each other. Sleep Token do not need to do that to get you to listen to their record. I love collaboration, just to really make sure that that is communicated well. Bad Omens brings in a Poppy. Poppy brings in House of Protection. Like all this sort of stuff like that I think is really cool. But then seeing a band like this at the level they're at say, we don't need to tell you who is coming out on tour with us. We don't need any other voices on our records.
It exudes a high level of self-confidence. Yeah.
So like, I do appreciate that with all the bad that comes with the position they're in, it still feels like they're in control.
This album, as you see it, is almost like a reclamation of that control.
Feels like it.
Or almost like solidifying it in a sense. It sounds majestic to me. The latter half of Looking Windward's piano providing the perfect backdrop to Vessel's staggeringly powerful delivery, culminating in a raucous instrumental that as a whole attacks the senses from every possible angle. The instrumental backing to Provider, which makes every single word feel powerful and explosive. Gethsemane, which catapults the listener through an emotional journey that will levitate you from the ground with its pure beauty and intricately woven instrumental. And then the way it culminates into one final, massively devastating track in Infinite Baths, a swan song, a final reluctant capitulation to the heavy, overbearing feeling that has suffocated every moment of this album, a final weight collapsing and shattering the spirit until it explodes into a frenzied collection of throat-tearing screams. This whole record just feels like it's one massive, swelling moment that they fully capitalize in the last 10 minutes. And I think that it's honestly beautiful and there is a majesty to it. And I think in that sense, the majesty of how this sounds really does speak to the visual aesthetic of how it's been presented overall.
I think it would be hard to argue you're wrong here. A lot of what you're hearing is undeniable. It also like lends itself to all of that world building. Like as much as you're talking about this not commending the visual aspect of it all, it does all sort of contribute to it as well. Like all of it, the synergy of it all is there.
So that's a point I've made in prior episodes, right? Where I do feel that a music video that isn't simply a visualizer would go a long way. But I don't dislike the visual aesthetic that's provided by all of this. I just wish that we took it a few steps further and we brought it into the real world in some sense. I think that what I realistically want is to see the concept taken even further because I do really like it. A sort of 7.5 minute banner burning to ashes is neat. I think it feels as if there's so much more we could be doing and expanding upon.
I think I was more referencing the greater lore, the world building of Eden and now Arcadia, and these all start to feel like real places.
There's part of me that does appreciate that there's not a deep level of lore that I feel I need to ingest to appreciate this. Somewhere out there's comic books and, you know, maybe not directly related to this, but like in general, I could go and really immerse myself, but that I can just pick up a Sleep Token record and it doesn't feel like the 23rd film in the MCU universe where I need to know what happened on This Place Will Become Your Two albums I've listened to, but I don't necessarily retain every aspect of their lore.
Right. I also don't think that like every single line needs lore. Pull up Genius for these songs that have been out less than 24 hours, and the annotations are fucking back. Shit. People's interpretations.
Right, it's
of
people's
every
interpretations.
single line.
Generally, I steer
insane.
clear of that kind of stuff just so I can sort of develop my own perspective before I like really dive into it. But it is always interesting to see how people have sort of also put themselves into these songs and interpreted them.
It's not that deep. Even for a band as crazy as Sleep Token, it is not that deep.
But I do appreciate the fact that like at a healthy level, there is a way to really engage with a record like this and try to pull the meaning from each individual line. Though I do have a question for you. Would you consider it a problem in this record that in all of this world building and visual aesthetic that they've crafted, it can feel slightly immersion breaking at times?
When
with
Vessel
the
references
modern
their cash flow, yeah.
Yes, with the sort of modern perspective brought to some of the lyrics.
It's felt that way there were moments in Take Me Back to Eden where that was the case.
It feels most extreme
I think specifically
here.
that title track where it's like the words like cold cuts, and I think there is also a reference to like cash flow. I like fucking Vessel's doing a money spread is what I close my eyes and see now.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe for as world breaking as some of the subject matter can be, for every cash flow like moment on this record, there is an equal or greater moment that invests you back into Sleep Token's world. Vessel has absolutely eviscerated the yearning meter on this album.
Okay.
It is broken beyond repair, beyond your wildest dreams, Sam. There's no putting this meter back together.
Stratospheric levels of yearning.
Just some scattered throughout this record. Won't you show me how to dance forever?
Mm-hmm.
I'm joining book talk right now.
Bar.
Do you want to hurt me because nobody hurts me better?
Bar.
I want to be your provider. Still see you when the lights go low.
Bar.
You've got me talking in my sleep as if you're conquering my dreams. They're all over. This man can't be stopped. He's in his fucking prime. The payoff on like the House Viridian feathered host stuff.
Yeah.
With the live by the feather and die by the sword lyric within the record as well. Oh my God. Loved hearing that. I also wanted to like give some type of shout out to the lyrical callbacks or nods ahead within this album, which I really didn't expect, but they're all over the place. Like on the title track leads off with essentially the words "a war on attrition," which is referenced in Caramel. Caramel mentions something about how you walk beside someone until you feel nothing. And then in Even in Arcadia, the title track, there is the lyric of walk beside me even in Arcadia. There are moments like that where it's just like, man, every single bit of this record, so much of it feels so careful and calculated and detailed.
The line in Provider, because you've been hitting my phone hard, found it breathing through a tube in the ICU.
I love it.
Yes, is one of those moments that like is immersion breaking from the world building we've been doing, but also hits so hella hard that it's hard to argue against it.
Yeah.
This man is bars
I
on
need
bars
him
on
in
bars
a
on
toxic
bars.
relationship forever. We'll know
Right.
Vessel got married the moment Sleep Token's lyrics go mid.
I think Vessel is completely and unashamedly willing to put themselves out there over the course of this record with no fear of judgment. Provider is a Simps anthem that illuminates a deep, passionate, clawing love that escapes from inside and spills out into every line delivery and carefully crafted lyric. Damocles, centered around the harsh light of the spotlight and the overwhelming sensation of trying to maintain people's love and adoration in the light of an ever-growing demand to continue to inspire and surprise them, is an emotional brick that crashes directly through the window of my soul and shatters it into a million pieces. It's a song that begs me the most to return and wade in its tragedy, craving the way it makes me feel emotionally drained by the end. All that being said, Guesstimate feels like multiplying the weight of every song that came before it and bearing that pressure down upon my chest until I can no longer breathe. Which is to say that overall, this idea that the lived experience of Vessel provides a level of quote unquote entertainment is very much the fact. Their ability to take, once again, their lived experience and so elegantly put it to words and music and translate it for the listener, I think is done immensely well on this album.
It's also done in such a way that it makes it somewhat relatable at times. So Vessel is literally serving as a vessel for the listener too. It's that vulnerability that you really connect to. It's the emotion, it's the feeling.
And that's the irony of an individual who is masked and whose identity remains a secret to also alternatively put themselves out there in so many different ways.
Be able to bear their heart in such a way.
Mm-hmm.
Where on the food chain does this put us? I don't think this band anymore sits atop the musical food chain as they were. I think that they're above it. While others claw and climb, Sleep Token have very clearly just taken flight, soaring into a realm untouched by competition. I don't think that their talent in any way, shape, or form is measured in charts or sales. It's in the silence they leave in their wake. It's in the bands that dodge their blast radius when they release a new song or album. And it's as if the very air knows it's in the presence of something divine at this point. I don't think that they are the hierarchy any longer. They are the anomaly. And I think that they continue to be a force so potent that they just are impossible to ignore. I think I land on this album with just a firm light A. It's not quite an A minus, but it's an A. I don't think it's an A plus. It doesn't leave me feeling as awestruck as some of their previous material, and in no way can I fault them for that. That's my listening experience, right? And that's something that I factor in. But I still think that Sleep Token remain one of the most special projects that we've had the privilege of watching grow and grow and grow over the years. I think that what they've established here is just a continuation in what makes them so great. They've refined their sound even further. They're on top of their fucking game on so many of these tracks. Caramel, probably my favorite of the singles. Dangerous for me is my favorite track that's a non-single.
I'm kind of in this realm right now where I'm in an alternating sort of favorite song.
Yeah, for sure.
Of the singles, I think it's still Damocles for me that ends up speaking most to my sensibilities. But outside of that, I really do bounce around. Gethsemane and Infinite Baths, I think, is such an insane way to go out on this album that they really are the ones that stick to me the most when I finish. But then alternatively, I think Look to Windward is also it's such an incredible way of starting this record, and I think it really hooks you at the jump. Take Me Back to Eden was a generational album within this scene, completely and fully commanding the attention of the alternative space. Attempting to surpass it would arguably be an exercise in futility, and yet multiple spins deep into this record, I find myself turning the thought over and over in my head that this album may have delivered an even more expansive and gratifying experience.
To cut you off just briefly, I really appreciate that this band didn't freeze with every, just obviously the amount of growth they experienced, the hype and anticipation of the next music that they would release. This band could have easily overthought everything, kept going back and back to the drawing board before eventually releasing the album. And no, we got this sooner than 2 years after the last record.
In some ways, there is a level of perspective that you've shared here that I also think is touched upon in the record in some capacity, which is to say that there is this fear that comes with the fame that maybe isn't strictly tied to this idea that, your identity is doxed or, your fans are overbearing in some sense, but that there is a level of creativity you need to maintain, and now you're doing it in the brightest spotlight you've ever experienced.
Yeah.
This album is a feast for those who crave the sensation garnered from someone completely spilling their insides out for everyone to analyze and to exist vicariously through. It's a tragic, magical experience that envelops and consumes its listener. The way it sends you off with not so much as a single care for your emotional stability, instead careening like a car crash into absolute oblivion. This record pulls back from the experimentation as it settles into a confident signature style that develops upon the experience of the previous record. It's an unsettling, unnerving, bold, assertive, spiritual, powerful, emotionally burdenful voyage through the lens of a tortured soul that's willing to fillet themselves for the benefit of the audience. It's exemplary. It's an A+ for me. And I think that Sleep Token continues to exist in a completely separate plane of existence from every other band in their radius. Ultimately, when I first went into this record, that feeling of being underwhelmed really haunted me. And as I continued to listen to it over and over and over again, my feelings shifted dramatically to the point where I felt that I had almost worked myself back into having the same experience I had with Take Me Back to Eden. And that experience is one of, if not the best album listening experiences I've had in this scene, period.
So memorable.
And that this album's able to scratch that same itch is something that I think is A+ worthy. If you are in conversation with one of my favorite albums of all time, then I think you are at the bottom, at the very least, another absolutely phenomenal record.